All right, strap yourselves in, because today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of Cyberpunk 2077.
Ooh, yeah, one of my favorites.
We've got our copies of The World of Cyberpunk 2077 right here, ready to dig into the lore
Sounds good.
and really try to figure out, would we actually want to live in this world? I mean, is Night City the kind of place you'd pack your bags for or run screaming from?
It's a good question, and I think it's a question a lot of people ask when they first get into the cyberpunk universe.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that makes it so interesting is that it kind of reflects our anxieties about the future, right?
Yeah, definitely. It takes issues that we're grappling with today, like corporate power, social inequality, technological dependence, all this stuff, and then just dials it up to 11.
Absolutely. So before we start fantasizing about, getting our own custom cyberware and cruising through those neon-lit streets, let's take a step back and really paint a picture of what this world looks like. Our source material describes Night City as this kind of dystopian sprawl ruled by megacorporations. So we're not talking about governments calling the shots here. We're talking about corporations. And we all know those aren't always known for their ethical practices.
Right.
So that's already a little bit of a red flag. And what's even crazier is that the city itself is actually built on the ruins of a previous city that was destroyed after a corporate war. Can you believe that?
It's really wild. And the book actually goes into detail about how nation states basically collapsed and corporations just swooped in and seized power after a whole bunch of economic and environmental
It
disasters.
was like a whole domino effect.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing leads to another, and then suddenly you've got corporations running the show.
And the fourth corporate war, oh man, that was a brutal one. It pretty much left Night City as this battleground for power struggles between all these megacorps like Arasaka and Militech.
Hold on. Corporations actually went to war with each other, like full-on military conflict.
Oh yeah, they had their own private armies, cutting-edge weaponry, the whole 9 yards. It was a total mess.
Okay, so we've got a city built on the ashes of conflict, corporations calling the shots. Not exactly a reassuring start. But that brings us to the big question. Would you actually want to live in Night City? I mean, knowing all of this, would you pack your bags and move there?
Tough call, right? On one hand, it's like this technological wonderland. Imagine having access to all that cutting-edge cyberware, pushing the boundaries of human potential. Like you could basically become a superhero.
That's the dream.
Right. But on the other hand, it's a pretty brutal reality. Violence is everywhere, the social inequality is off the charts, and you're constantly under the watchful eye of these all-powerful corporations.
So it's like a trade-off. You get the cool tech, but you also get all the downsides that come with it.
Definitely something to think about.
Okay, so maybe it's not exactly paradise. But let's say, hypothetically, we do decide to take the plunge and move to Night City. What kind of life are we actually talking about? The book talks about these distinct districts, each with its own vibe.
Yeah, you've got City Center, which is like the heart of it all, the financial district.
All right.
Always bustling, tons of skyscrapers. That's where a lot of the corporate headquarters are.
And then there's Pacifica, right, which is like the complete opposite. This is a zone that was supposed to be this like luxurious resort area, but the corporations basically abandoned it and it became this poverty-stricken zone that's now overrun with gangs and violence.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark contrast to the wealth and glamour of City Center. And then you've got places like Westboro, more suburban, kind of a mix of everything.
Right, so you've got all these different areas, different levels of wealth, different levels of danger.
And cutting through all of that is cyberware. I mean, it's everywhere in Night City.
Oh yeah, that's the thing you can't escape.
Right, it's a status symbol, it's a tool for survival, it's both liberating and dangerous.
So people are using it for everything. Like, I'm thinking about those mantis blades again. Those are terrifying, but also kind of awesome. Imagine being able to slice through almost anything with those things.
They're pretty wild. And then you've got all the enhanced optics that let you see in the dark, zoom in on things, even record what you're seeing.
It's like having superpowers built right into your body.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer.
Okay, so let's say, for a minute, we get to go full-on cyberpunk. What kind of cyberware would you want?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There are so many options. Enhanced reflexes would be pretty sweet, make you super agile and quick.
Yeah.
Or maybe some kind of neural implant that boosts your intelligence and processing power.
Or what about something like real skin that lets you basically change your appearance on the fly? I mean, talk about a chameleon.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool for blending in or going undercover. But you got to remember, all this awesome tech comes with some serious risks.
Oh, right, right.
The book talks about cyberpsychosis, which is this mental disorder caused by too much cybernetic augmentation. Basically, you lose your grip on reality and become a danger to yourself and others. Not exactly a good look.
Yikes. Okay, so it's not all fun and games, huh?
Not always. You got to weigh the risks and benefits carefully.
So cyberware is this double-edged sword. It's got incredible potential, but it can also mess you up pretty badly. So we got to think carefully about what we'd want, right?
Definitely. And that's just scratching the surface. There are so many other aspects of Night City to explore. Like, what about the different factions and gangs that control different parts of the city?
Oh, yeah, we can't forget about them. We've got the Valentinos, who are all about tradition and community, but they're also involved in some shady stuff.
Uh-huh. And then there are the Maelstrom, who are basically obsessed with cyberware and violence. They're like a walking cautionary tale about what happens when technology goes too far.
And the Voodoo Boys, those are the ones I'm really curious about. They're these enigmatic netrunners who operate out of Pacifica. They're supposed to have this deep understanding of cyberspace and use their skills to protect their community from corporate control.
They're definitely a force to be reckoned with, and their story is just one of many in Night City. It's a city full of fascinating characters, dangerous situations, and moral dilemmas.
It's like this giant melting pot of technology, culture, and danger all mixed together.
Absolutely, and that's what makes it so compelling.
All right, so we've talked about the corporations, the cyberware, the dangers, the different districts. But let's get back to that original question. Would you actually want to live in Night City?
It's a tough one. There's so much to consider. On one hand, you've got all this amazing technology, the potential for self-enhancement, the vibrant culture. But on the other hand, you've got the violence, the poverty, the corporate control.
And the risk of cyberpsychosis.
Right, exactly. It's a world of extremes, both good and bad.
So it's not an easy decision. It's like this constant balancing act, weighing the risks and rewards.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to explore.
All right, so we've set the stage, we've painted a picture of Night City. But now it's time to dive deeper into the heart of this world, the technology that defines it.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of cyberware.
Let's break down the different types, the enhancements they offer, and the potential consequences of pushing human limits with technology.
Sounds good to me.
All right, listener, get ready, because we're about to go full-on cyberpunk and explore the fascinating world of cybernetics in Night City.
All right, so let's really jack into this world of cyberware.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
It really is like the heart and soul of Night City, this fusion of like flesh and technology that just totally blurs the line between human and machine.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate self-modification, right? You can literally become a better version of yourself.
Exactly. And the book breaks it down into 3 generations of cyberware,
Ah, cool. Okay, interesting.
each with its own level of like sophistication and risk. So first gen cyberware, that's the OG stuff, affordable, basic enhancements, like boosted strength, improved reflexes. It's kind of like the gateway drug to cybernetics.
Right, so that's like your entry level, dipping your toes in the water.
Exactly. You're just getting a taste.
Okay, but I imagine things get really wild with like second and third gen.
Oh, absolutely. Second gen is where it gets juicy. More advanced stuff, enhanced senses, neural interfaces. You can even get subdermal armor.
Whoa, so that's where we start seeing those iconic cybernetic modifications that Cyberpunk is known for, right?
Exactly, like those mantis blades we keep talking about.
Mantis blades.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. How cool are those? Being able to slice through anything with just like a flick of your wrist, it's terrifying, but also kind of awesome.
They're pretty badass, but they also come with a hefty price tag and a higher risk of cyberpsychosis.
Right, so the more invasive the cyberware, the bigger the risk.
It's a trade-off. You got to be careful what you wish for.
Okay, so you're telling me I can't just go full cyborg right out the gate.
Not if you want to stay sane.
Okay. So, what about the top tier, third gen cyberware? That must be like superhuman level stuff.
Oh yeah, third gen is like the holy grail. Incredibly rare, crazy expensive, enhancements that border on like science fiction.
So we're talking about like full body conversions, cloaking systems, stuff that sounds like it's straight out of a movie.
Pretty much, but with those kinds of enhancements, the risks are astronomical. Cyberpsychosis is a very real threat, and you become totally dependent on corporations to maintain that level of technology.
Oh, so it's like you're leasing your own body from these megacorp.
It's kind of like that. You gain incredible power and abilities, but at what cost?
It's a real moral dilemma.
Okay.
Listener, let's play a little game. If you could get any cybernetic implant you wanted, what would it be? Pure functionality, enhanced strength, improved reflexes. Or something more extreme like those mantis blades?
Think about it carefully. The initial cost and the coolness factor isn't everything. There are long-term consequences.
Yeah. Impact on your mental and physical well-being, and then there's the whole loss of autonomy thing. It's heavy stuff.
It definitely makes you question, is all this enhancement really worth it?
So cyberware is this powerful tool that can both elevate you and destroy you. It's kind of like playing with fire. You got to be careful.
Right, but Night City's about more than just the cyberware, right? It's also this vibrant, sprawling metropolis with this crazy history.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about the history. Night City wasn't just built overnight. It's a city built on the ashes of conflict, shaped by this relentless pursuit of power.
Right, those corporate wars we talked about earlier, those weren't just some abstract events, those were brutal conflicts that reshaped the world as we know it.
Yeah, and Night City was born out of that chaos.
Right, the city we see in the game, it's actually built on the ruins of a previous city that was destroyed in one of those wars. It's a constant reminder that even in this high-tech world, history has a nasty habit of repeating itself.
Yeah, kind of a sobering thought. So
Yeah.
it's not just about the cool tech and the futuristic aesthetics. There's this whole layer of history that informs everything.
Exactly. The Fourth Corporate War, for example, that was a huge turning point for Night City. It saw the rise of Arasaka, that Japanese megacorp that still holds a ton of power in the city.
Oh yeah, Arasaka, those guys are everywhere. Their influence is inescapable.
They pretty much control everything, from those massive skyscrapers that dominate the skyline to those advanced security systems that monitor every street corner. And they played a key role in shaping the city we see today.
So knowing the history of Arasaka isn't just some fun fact. It's crucial for understanding how Night City operates.
Absolutely. It gives you context for the power dynamics, the social structures, everything. It's not just about the present, it's about understanding how the past led to this.
Okay, so we've got the Fourth Corporate War, but wasn't there also something called the Unification War?
Hmm.
I think that was like a conflict within the United States itself, right?
Right. So the Unification War, that was back in the early 2000s, pitted the new United States against a bunch of free states, including Northern California, where Night City is located. It was a brutal conflict fueled by political and economic tensions. You know, the usual stuff.
So it wasn't just corporations fighting each other. It was entire regions of the country battling for control.
Exactly. It was a total mess. And it's another reminder of just how fragile the world of cyberpunk really is.
Yeah, and then you had those environmental crises that were happening around the same time, right? Like those dust storms and stuff that ravaged the planet.
Yeah, those were devastating. They led to resource scarcity, social unrest, the whole 9 yards. It was like a perfect storm for corporate takeover.
So these crises created this power vacuum that the corporations were all too eager to fill. They swooped in and promised stability, security, but ultimately it came at the cost of individual freedoms and the concentration of power in the hands of, a select few.
Right, and that's a theme that runs throughout the cyberpunk universe, this tension between individual freedom and corporate control.
So understanding the history of Night City isn't just about knowing the past. It's about recognizing the patterns that led to this dystopian future.
Right, and asking ourselves, are we on a similar path in our own world?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Okay.
Okay, so we've explored the history, the technology, and the dangers. Now it's time to talk about the people who inhabit this crazy world.
Right, the people who actually live in Night City, they're what make it so fascinating.
Yeah, because Night City is more than just a setting. It's a collection of stories, a community, a melting pot of humanity.
The book does a great job of portraying this diversity. From the corporate elite who live in those luxurious high-rises, completely detached from the reality of the streets, to the working class who are just trying to make ends meet.
Right, and then there are the forgotten ones, the homeless, the victims of cyberpsychosis, those who have fallen through the cracks of this hyper-capitalist society.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in a world of dazzling technology, there are still people struggling with basic human needs and problems.
Right, it's like this constant tension between the shiny surface and the gritty underbelly.
Exactly. And that's what makes Night City so real, so relatable. It's not just some abstract dystopia, it's a reflection of the challenges and inequalities we see in our own world.
So it's like this cautionary tale, right? It shows us what can happen when we let things get out of control.
Yeah, but it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit. Even in this crazy world, there are people fighting for a better future.
Right, there's always hope, even in the darkest of places.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Cyberpunk 2077 so compelling. It's a story about humanity, about our capacity for both good and evil, and about the choices we make in the face of adversity.
It's a story that makes you think, that challenges you, and that ultimately leaves you wanting more. All right, so we've wandered those neon-soaked streets, dodged gang violence in the dark alleys, and even delved into the history of Night City. But there's this, one last piece of this whole cyberpunk puzzle I think we need to look at. The tech itself. Is all this crazy advanced technology in Night City ultimately a good thing? Or is it leading humanity down a path we really don't want to go down?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The book actually talks about something called second wave cyberpunk. And it's kind of interesting, even in this dystopian future, like Night City, there's a tiny glimmer of hope.
Second wave cyberpunk. Okay, I like the sound of that. So instead of just accepting this crazy corporate-controlled cybernetic world, there's a chance to push back and maybe use this tech to create a better future.
Yeah, you got it. It's about recognizing that technology, even stuff like cyberware, can be used for good. It's all about who's in control. Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of just being afraid of the tech, we could try to shape it, use it to actually solve problems. I mean, that's a pretty radical idea, especially in a world like Night City.
It is radical, but the book suggests it's possible. Imagine cyberware being used to help people, overcome disabilities, to boost creativity. That's the whole idea behind second wave cyberpunk.
That's a future I can get behind. But let's be real. In Night City, it seems like the corporations have their fingers in every pie. They're using the tech for profit, for control, not exactly for the benefit of humanity. So how do we even start to shift that balance?
Well, the book reminds us that technology is just a tool. A hammer can build a house, or it can, break a skull. It all comes down to who's wielding it. So the key to second wave cyberpunk is about challenging that corporate control, making the tech accessible to everyone, not just the highest bidder.
Okay, so it's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about fighting for a more fair way to use it. I mean, that's something we're dealing with right now, right? Who controls the algorithms, who benefits from the data. It's all connected.
Exactly. And Cyberpunk 2077, it forces us to really think about these things.
For sure. And I think the book does a great job of not just showing us the flashy tech, but also the human side of all of this. Those stories about the people trying to survive in Night City, that really brings it home.
Those stories are so powerful. You meet people from all walks of life, struggling artists, street vendors, people who've had their lives completely upended by technology.
Right. And it's not always pretty. There's this one story in the book that really stuck with me. It was about this young woman who lost her legs in a terrible accident and got these cybernetic replacements, right? At first, she's super excited. She can move better than ever before. But then she realizes that the corporation that made her legs can basically disable them whenever they want. She's totally at their mercy.
Oh, wow. That's a perfect example of how tech can both liberate and enslave us.
Exactly. It's chilling to think about, but it's important to acknowledge these darker sides of technology, especially when we're talking about a future like Cyberpunk 2077.
For sure. The book doesn't shy away from those darker aspects, and I think that's what makes it so valuable, so thought-provoking.
Yeah, it's not just entertainment. It's like a warning, but also a challenge. So as we step back from the neon lights and the chrome and back into our own world, what lessons should we take with us from Night City?
I think Cyberpunk 2077 is a cautionary tale. It shows us what can happen when corporate greed and technological advancement run wild, when profit comes before people. But it also offers that glimmer of hope. It reminds us that we can shape our own future, that we can use tech for good if we're willing to fight for it.
That's a powerful message, and it's something we need to keep in mind as we navigate this rapidly changing world. So listener, as you go about your day, remember Night City. Be mindful of the choices we make, the technology we embrace. We're building the future right now, and it's up to us to make it a good one. And on that note, I think it's time for us to jack out of Night City. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of Cyberpunk 2077. We'll see you in the next deep dive.